Hello everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, everybody, and joining us. We are in for a very special night. We have a all AIE crowd here with us. So let's begin with introducing Emma Humphreys, who is the lovely event officer, I should say, from AIE Canberra. Thank you for being with us tonight, Emma.
Thank you, Matt.
And we are joined tonight by two AIE recent graduates of the Advanced Diploma, Jason and Martin. So thank you so much for being with us here tonight, guys.
No, not at all.
Thank you.
So we are going to dive into the Advanced Diploma that they've just recently been studying, and also the fantastic and creative game, I'm going to say, that they've made during their major production for last year. I'm really excited to hear about it, and as I'm sure everyone else joining us is as well. So as usual, throughout the live stream tonight, if we do have questions coming in from the viewers, please do feel free to pop them in the YouTube, Facebook, or on our website chat. And we'll do our best to get them answered. I'm sure Jason and Martin are very friendly and have a world of advice for you out there as well. So pick their brains, throw them some hard questions, and that'll be a fun stream. So I'll pass over to you, Emma, but thank you everyone again.
Thank you very much. Well, so Jason, Martin, you were part of our second year Diploma cohort here on the Canberra campus in 2020. So you guys obviously studied through COVID and all of the challenges that you guys created an amazing team project. So I thought we'd just start right at the beginning and just talk about maybe what the process was like with the group together and coming up with ideas. So Jason, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. I'll start off. So the idea for the game actually came about at the was it the beginning of last year? No, it was late 2019 was the original game jam, wasn't it? So we were doing a game jam together, organised by AIE. And so the team for that was myself, Martin, 2 other artists, and 1 other designer. And the other designer, Connor, thankfully managed to bodge together the programming. So if you're watching, Connor, thank you again. So the theme for that game jam was "It's Not You, It's Me," which was a rather weird and interesting prompt, but that kind of got us thinking about ways of interacting with yourself as a player. So using your route or your actions taken in a past life to then accompany you in your following life. So that got us thinking about stuff like time travel, like playing alongside and cooperating with a ghost of your previous actions, in a similar manner to a couple of other games. But what we ended up coming up with was a game where we basically used death as the major mechanic. So the death and respawn process to leave behind a block at the location of the player's death, which you could then use to do things, climb up it, bounce off it, and use it to access new areas.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Really, good ideas coming out of the game jam. I've heard that, a lot of games come out, and we're really hoping to start hosting some now that we
it's
with COVID ended.
It's an interesting one. So for those of you watching who aren't familiar with game jams or haven't done one before, basically the idea is that you and a small group of people, or sometimes even just a solo developer, takes 48 hours to make a game. So it's normally a very good way of making a rubbish game very quickly, but you learn a lot about working with people under time pressure, and it's all around a great experience. But I must say that I was as surprised as anyone else to come out of it and then be looking back on what we'd made and actually go, you know what, that's a really solid concept, with a lot more time to actually polish it and not be kind of like bodging everything together at the last minute. It could actually turn into something pretty neat. And so I took that concept and pitched it later during our second year. And that pitch got approved by the industry panel and teachers. And so then we were able to launch that into pre-production.
Yeah, awesome. It's a great game. I've been playing it. It's very challenging. So did the idea with like the self-former just come out of that whole game jam idea, or was it kind of more you thought a few different genres and this is the one that worked out best with a little platform? I can't think of what the words are off the top of my head, but yeah. Because it's an interesting challenge game that definitely meddles with your mind as you go through each level.
Yeah, so we this wasn't the only game that I pitched for the major project, but the other one, I'm kind of thankful that it didn't make it through as well, because first of all, like splitting my attention between 2 projects during pre-production would have been a nightmare if I was running both of them. But also the other one was much less achievable in scope. So one of the big selling points of this as a pitch was that first of all, it had a relatively proven concept in that we did have a janky but workable prototype from the original game jam, but also that it was so modular that it was very achievable in the amount of time that we had.
Yeah, and it definitely is. You've done some levels with the game, which is really great to play from a player's perspective. How did you guys build the team? Was it just the original game jam, or did you get more people involved, like more artists? Tell us about that process.
As I mentioned before, both Martin and I were working on the original game jam, and so right from the start, very much from the first pitch of this, I wanted Martin on the team, and so I worked pretty heavily with him, even leading up to the pitch, on where we wanted to go with the art style and the aesthetic, the feel of the game. Because even though I guess the core mechanics of the original game jam prototype remained relatively the same, the respawn mechanic, the isometric layouts, the grid system, that sort of thing did remain the same. The original one was basically just colored blocks, and so we really had to create an art style from the ground up. From there, I lobbied pretty heavily to get Matt Suller, here his name's just up on the screen there behind us, because from the available designers, and this was always going to be a very design-heavy game, I felt that he had the best skill set to help me out with all the level design and so on. Also, we wanted, at the very least, a programmer, which we didn't have the first time round. So yeah, actually, that's a funny thing. We originally pitched it as basically like a 2 or 2.5 person pitch. One of the things was that it could be done with a very small team. Myself, Martin, and then part-time assistance from a programmer to help round it out. And we ended up with actually a much larger team, totaling 3 designers, one of whom was working on the second project as well. So call it 2.5 or 2 2/3. And Martin, do you want to talk a bit about you and Sai and all of that?
So at the very beginning, we were all talking about what projects we wanted to be part of, and we wrote our names on the boards. And the teachers looked at one game and thought, this game needs a second artist. So they approached me because they knew our game, it wasn't very art heavy. So I said yes. So I was now working on 2 games, but I wasn't so confident that I'd be able to get everything done. So that's when I asked the teachers, hey, can we get a second artist? And they said, yeah, we'll take Sai. And that's how we got Sai.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's definitely a beautiful game. I love the style that you've gone for, and I love the little grid, how the box stays the same and you work that.
Yeah.
How did you use any references to any movies or films or any other art styles when you were coming up with the look of how the game's going to look?
Yeah, so the biggest influence is definitely Monument Valley. Any step of the process, we were looking at that. We were looking, they've got soft gradients or they've done it in a very particular way. So we were taking a lot of inspiration from that and just building off from there. Otherwise, Jason was working on a game with another designer, Driss, called Sheer, and they thought, hey, this is actually quite similar to what you're looking for. And so we're taking a lot of inspiration from that as well.
That's a funny one, actually, that you mentioned that, Martin, because Sheer, this other project that I worked on with Driss, so it had a very similar orthographic and grid-based layout. But funnily enough, one of the influences for our art style on that was actually the original game Jam prototype for me, myself, and Di. So it's this sort of like self-referential sequence there.
Well, you've obviously and it's working for you. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely successful. You guys mentioned a pretty big team with multiple designers, multiple artists. So from this perspective, how did you divide up the work? Because obviously with so many levels, there was a lot of work that went in, and then all of that had to be made beautiful by the artist. How did you actually sit down and be like, oh, you're going to do that?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about working on this project was the really short time frame. So we had what would it be, 14 weeks, Martin?
Yep.
Yeah, 14 weeks from start to finish, basically, plus a couple of weeks of pre-production, which really isn't anywhere near as much time as it sounds. And we had a lot to do. We had, although the game was pretty modular, the minimum viable product was fairly achievable, there was quite a bit that we would like to get done. So having a really rapid turnaround time was absolutely essential. And so we only had basically a bare skeleton of what we needed by when. A lot of our effort in terms of who was doing what and when was really focused on identifying and dealing with short-term bottlenecks to make sure that there was no time being wasted at any point.
Cool. That sounds great. Yeah. Well, again, all of our students were in strict lines, which is very similar to the industry. And yeah, we seeing the projects that you can create because obviously this one was so successful. But likely you've been doing it throughout all of AIE, working with the other streams. What was this time any different with the other streams? Like you had a programmer, had you worked with programmers before? What was it like being like, were the designers the lead on the project? Obviously, it came from your original global. How was the like makeup of the stream with the group with all of the different teams in it?
So we all had a bit of experience in working with the other streams before. At the end of first year, there's a group project as well, which involved collaboration between the three areas, I suppose, and everyone learned a hell of a lot from that. Everyone had different problems, and we learned from the problems on our own projects and the problems that we were seeing happen on everyone else's projects. So we were definitely fairly well armed this time around, and we really didn't encounter that many issues at all. It was a surprisingly, almost a shockingly easy production period. There weren't really any huge problems, or actually, no, there was one. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. So what Martin and I were just chuckling there, remembering, was that we actually had some. I mentioned just before that one of the big focuses was a really rapid turnaround. So we, across the 14 weeks, probably about 9 or 10 of those, we were doing playtesting. Across those 9 or 10 weeks, we pushed 19 different playtest builds and collected a huge amount of feedback. So having that rapid iteration so that we were solving problems as soon as they came up, and could move on to identifying and targeting and addressing other problems was really essential. So probably the biggest setback I'd say that we had the whole production period was when we broke things and were unable to make any builds for a period of 10 days, which was pretty rough. So that happened. I'm just trying to remember, Martin. We were trying to get it active on the Play Store, which would make it much easier to push playtest updates rather than having to send everybody out an APK and have them delete the old app and reinstall like the whole thing from scratch. We would have been able to basically just push updates to a closed testing group on Google Play, which would have been really neat. Unfortunately, the API that we needed to do that to the API required by Google Play wasn't supported by the version of Unity we were working on. And we couldn't update Unity without going through the whole licensing issues with the school. And in our attempts to get that set up, changing a couple of things basically unintentionally changed a whole bunch of other settings, which were very, very difficult to hunt down and not well documented at all. And that left us unable to build it all for about 10 or 11 days. But we did eventually get that figured out. And even though we weren't able to put it on Google Play for that testing, we did at least regain the ability to make and push builds, which was nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, big congratulate you guys that you got it on Google Play. We should mention that it is available to play on Google and Itch, which is awesome. I've downloaded. I love it. It's really good. So yeah, Matt, did we have a question possibly?
So just mentioning that, actually, it's a good time to jump in. I did just pop in chat the link, so you can go to the link that on the YouTube and Facebook chat if you want to have a bit of a free download and free play around of it. It's a really fun game. I definitely recommend doing it. We don't have any questions that have come through from our social media. However, I am a viewer, so I did one question popped into my head, and it was such a strange question. I haven't asked any, and I don't get the chance to, so this is a good timing for it. But when you were making your game and you were just talking about like a big issue like that, then is it that stage that your teacher, and the question really comes as, what was the best advice that a teacher gave you through your production phase? And was it more the technical stuff, so like e.g. fixing that 10-day issue where you had to block out and couldn't work on your game, or was it more of a, hey, maybe you should take your game in this way rather than maybe a pre-thought idea?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Anything come to mind, Mark?
Yeah. There was a lot of guidance on art style. There was definitely a lot of, hey, you should take a look at this, and just a general guide of where we should go with it and how we can improve the game. But I don't think there was any technical questions.
Yeah. Okay, and Jason, for you?
Yeah. I think that probably the best advice that I got on the design and on the team leading and production side of it didn't actually come during the production period. It came a bit before, and that was a couple of things that Rick, the wonderful second-year design teacher at AIE Canberra, really drummed into us. One was get playtesting as soon as humanly possible. That'd probably be the biggest thing, and that was a huge focus of our production period. That's rapid and continuous playtesting. I'd probably say that would be the really big one.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely worked for your team. So it's a great piece of advice to pass on to future teams and to anyone really. Well, going off that, what makes Me, Myself, and I unique? So obviously did a lot of play testing to make sure that everything was working. But was there stuff that people were pointing out I love this aspect, I haven't seen this before? What is the parts that really make Me, Myself, and I out?
I'd probably say that the concept of it is a bit unusual and does people tend to react to that with oh cool, I haven't really encountered that in many other games. And the big one would be the respawn mechanic. So there are a handful of other games out there where I guess death is one of the primary goals. Something like Super Meat Boy really comes to mind. But one of the interesting things in our game, in Me, Myself, and Die, is that a lot of the challenge is actually trying to die in the right places. It's very easy to die in most levels, and most of the time you can see where you need to get blocks, but trying to do things in the right order to orchestrate your death to make those blocks as useful as possible is it's really the core aspect of the game. Anything come to your mind, Martin?
No, I think you've nailed it. It's definitely our respawn mechanic and core loop that makes our game so interesting and unique.
Yeah, well, definitely experienced that. I think I was on level 3 or 4, and I was just constantly dying in the rot, and I was no. And I had to die 4 times all over again to make it it was all going to plan. And I was I'm dying in the wrong spot. So I did it 4 times, and then I eventually got it. But that was on level 4 again. We've got to improve those game instincts, but we've got some improvement. I've made a lot more progress through the game now, but it was a learning curve definitely on making sure die here so that I can progress to the next level.
The fourth level was actually a really interesting one to design. So the first 3 levels are really just tutorials. They demonstrate to the player what's going on with the respawn mechanic and how, as you die, your old blocks change color and eventually despawn entirely, as we just saw in that clip that popped up there. And so level 4 is really the first time that the player is actually challenged to solve something themselves rather than just discovering how things work. And so trying to get that in the right place so that it reinforces all the mechanics that you've been taught in the first 3 levels, while challenging the player enough that it kind of drums home the idea that, you're going to have to think about these puzzles, that it's not going to be a particularly easy game, but without making it frustrating, and particularly, of course, without making the player feel foolish or stupid. And trying to run that line between appropriately challenging so that it's really satisfying and makes you feel really intelligent and smart and capable for solving a puzzle, but without it being frustrating or feel like the player's butting their head against a wall if there's something that they don't realize. It was a really, really interesting design challenge for me.
Yeah, definitely. What's the part of the game that you're most proud of? Is it actually figuring out a way to make the player feel involved and to like embrace the challenge and not get frustrated with it? Is it like the dying like over and over again, coming up with an idea? What's the part that you each is proud of?
Martin?
Jason, do you want to take that away?
Yeah, sure. Probably, I guess in terms of the production, if I can answer that question in two parts. In terms of the production, the thing I was really the most proud of was the fantastic communication that we had within the team, particularly because a couple of the people were, as Martin mentioned, were working on multiple projects. So making sure that everyone was up to speed on what was going on so that we didn't lose any time in the transition and we could keep that rapid turnaround cycle I was really quite proud of how we handled that. In terms of the game itself, though, probably the level sequencing and the depth, I suppose, the variety of puzzles that we could put in with what is really a very small number of mechanics. So one of the things that I've heard, which I really like and I try to focus on whenever I'm doing design work, is that the best design is the most depth from the least complexity. So we've only got, I think, about 4 different hazards in the game. 4 or 5, which really isn't very many at all. The rules of the game are very simple. You can only have 3 of those death blocks present at a time before the oldest one despawns. That never changes. How the mechanics operate never changes. So there's really not a huge amount that the player has to learn and remember, but we're able to generate a fairly large number of different and interesting puzzles from that without ever feeling stale or rehashed.
Yeah. Cool.
What about you, Martin?
Yeah, so definitely one of the things that Jason mentioned before was making sure that we didn't have any bottlenecks. So really early on in the production of our game, I needed to make a modular kit for them to use so that they can quickly iterate the levels, but also they didn't have to do much work after that. So part of that was the technical art. We had a shader which would scale the textures based on the object size. So that meant we needed one mesh that could do pretty much everything, as you might see in our time lapse.
We've got a clip of that, actually, if you could throw that up, Matthew.
Yes, bear with me 1 second, I'll chuck that up.
Yeah, so there's 2 of them. There's the grey one where Matt's if you could put up the grey one talking about the scaling that Martin was, and then there's the one about building levels.
Yep, so is this in the team commentary video?
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
So definitely trying to get those bottlenecks out would have been my proudest moment. Here you go. So this one's the scaling it by object size. And then, of course, the modular kit, just being able to quickly scale an object, build it all together, and then forget about it until you have to revise the level later. That definitely helped the designers and sped up all of our workflow.
A huge amount. I cannot overstate how essential and important that was in the early production period. Martin getting that up running very quickly really let us jump straight into designing and testing levels.
Yeah, awesome. Well, again, a great game. We're coming to the end of the live stream, but I congratulate you guys. I've played it. I have the best time. Do you guys want to just shout out again that we've got a link in the comments if you want to play the game? We have one already. So you can play it on there. It's available on Google Play and itch.io. Yeah, all good. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. I think Matt's just going to do a little wrap up, but thank you so much.
Yeah, a big thank you, guys. And before we do get to the little end segment, I guess we do have a question that's come through at the end. Now, I do know that, Jason, you talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but we do obviously have viewers who join us a little bit later. However, let's chuck it up on screen and see if it comes through on here. So from Jaden Hunter, we've got, how did you go about allocating tasks between each of the designers, artists in a team? And I do apologise, I've cut off our heads there for a second. So,
Martin, do you want to talk about dividing the art workload between you and Sai first?
Yeah. So there was a lot of what are the bottlenecks? That was the first priority. Figure out what they were and make sure they were done and dealt with quickly. So we just split those 50-50. After that, it was what did someone want to jump on? So if someone really enjoyed the character art, then they'd jump on that. And then there was the opposite of I really didn't want to do particles. So we'd try and like eliminate that kind of thing. And just to make sure that we were all on board of where we were using Trello to make sure everyone had that task. Yeah.
And on the design side of it, as I mentioned before, it really was a very design-heavy project. So we had 3 designers, one of whom was also shared with another project. That's 3 out of a team of 6, really. So that's a lot of designers, but there was a huge amount of design work to tackle. So as you've probably seen by now in all the stuff flashing up, we're 40 or more levels. So we've got 43 in the game at the moment, and there's a couple more that I'm working on at the moment, which will probably be released in the next month or so. One of the really big tasks that we had to continually divide was first of all the playtesting. So in addition to in-person playtesting where we would physically watch someone play it on one of our mobiles, which was really, really valuable because we not only get their answers to the questions, but we get to watch and see what confuses people, the things that people attempt, and try and then work out why what's causing players to attempt a particular task, what about the level is leading them to think in that way that we'll need to fix, and organizing those levels so that it's structured correctly and teaches players the right concepts in the right sequence at the right difficulty curve. So a huge amount of work in organizing and arranging those levels and working out what gaps we had in terms of what we needed to teach the player and what experience we needed them to have. Most of the design work was really split between the 3 of us based on who wanted to do what, who had spare time to target bottlenecks, as Martin mentioned, and that sort of thing. All 3 of us made a whole bunch of levels and then polished each other's levels and play tested and troubleshot each other's levels. I did most of probably about 2/3 of the work in kind of standardizing the levels and making sure that they all felt like the same game. And we really split the work of organizing, which, Martin, you remember the whiteboard basically across one of the walls in the design studio. We printed out little pictures of every single level and every single draft and prototype that we had and put them up there and moved them around as we changed the sequence and adjusted that. And of course, all the feedback that we were getting from Google Play forms, having to address that, continually discuss that, work out what problems we wanted to target, and so on, which was a huge amount of work, and it was really good to have 3 designers on the project for that.
Awesome.
So I guess everyone did everything.
I was about to say, Jaden, you could not ask for a more detailed answer than that. So thank you again so much, Jason, Martin, for being with us tonight. Last question for you. Do you have any bits of advice, wisdom for anyone watching tonight?
This one's, I guess, applicable to everyone, but is particularly essential for designers, is listen to the feedback that everyone else is giving. It can be really hard because the feedback that you're getting, you're thinking like, no, that's wrong, they don't understand this, or they're just not approaching it right. But the problem is that you're not going to be able to sit next to every player and help them through it, which means that if players, in the absence of help from you, keep making a particular mistake or keep doing something wrong, it's not them that's doing it's wrong, it's your design. Everything is the designer's responsibility, basically. And taking feedback can be really hard. It takes a bit of getting used to, but keep at it. It's definitely worth it. And also that good design ideas can come from anywhere. The designer's job is really working on the ideas and iterating them, playtesting, working everything together from all the different streams and areas and making it fit together cohesively. But listen to your artists, listen to your programmers, listen to your playtesters, because you can just mine their ideas.
Perfect. And Martin, any bits of advice on you, maybe from the more for the artists out there watching?
Oh, I definitely have to say communication in your team is key. If you've got an issue with something, you've got to let the team know very early on. Otherwise, you're just going to either not have a good time, or, I don't know, you're just going to have an issue and it's going to snowball later down the line. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, so for all the aspiring artists, designers, programmers out there who have joined tonight and who have become overcome with jealousy from the education that Jason and Martin have just gone through, I do have good news for you. On our website, you can still enroll. Enrollments are still open for our February intake. So for anyone who wants to know more information, the website there is so much information on here. It's a fabulous resource for yourself. So we do have all our courses listed here. It's not just at the career level. If you are in high school, we do have introductory courses that can be linked with your studies or connected with your studies. And for ages 12 and above, we do have beginner courses and holiday courses. So head to the website for those. And we've also got showcases, our events tab here, which at the moment we've got our information evening, which is on tomorrow. So it is definitely not too late to jump onto the website and register for that. Even if you are unavailable to make it into a campus tomorrow, we do have the online version of the information evening being delivered as well. So a lot of the information is going to be the exact same, as the courses are all the same throughout AIE. So please do jump on. You can watch it from your couch, get the information you need, and if you would like to as well, we are running campus tours as a bit of a get to more meet you, a bit more personal style interaction for you, and you can definitely ask teachers, ask the event officers questions, and we can get them answered for you. So head to the website, a lot of information there, or get in contact with your closest campus. So for everyone though tonight, thank you so much again for being with us, and thank you, a big thank you to Jason and Martin for allowing us to poke and prod and relive the memories of their major production. And thank you for Emma for being such a wonderful host tonight. So have a good evening, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.